Welcome everyone, as we learn Torah Hashem, Be'ezras Hashem Yisbarach, and as we are in the awesome month of Elul, we specially preface our learning that it should be to be Mekayim the mitzvah of Dibarta Bam, La'asais Nachas Ruach Liyotzreinu. As always, we begin with Hakar Satayv to TorahAnytime.com for its worldwide platform of Abatzis Torah, to Kol HaLashon for its global reach, to Torah Communications Network, to our wonderful Zoomers, our subscribers, and whoever is watching us and listening to us from any other type of gateway that I'm not even aware of. Welcome. We have two sponsors tonight. One is an anonymous sponsor in the schus for his daughter, Yehudis Naomi Bas Sarah Gittel, that she should find her shidduch, her zivig hagan, easily and quickly. We're also sponsored by my dear Talmud Barak Goldwasser, who does so much for his Zaydi's Yardzeit, Mordechai Gimpel, Ben Klunimis Kalman. Neshama should have an aliyah. He should be a melitz yosher for his family, for all of us, and all of Klal Yisrael. There is a very strong mandate in this week's parsha. Tamim tiyeh im Hashem Elokecha. One should be whole. One should be perfect with Hashem. So the Al-Shech HaKadosh has a very contemporary and blunt understanding of the message of this pasuk. He says that many people behave when other people are around. The Kitzur Shulchan Aruch tells us that it says, Shivisi Hashem lenegdi samad, you should have Hashem before you at all time, because a person behaves differently when he's in the palace of the king or when he's alone. But the Al-Shech says a person behaves differently when other people are watching. And Tomim Tia means we should be perfect Ima Hashem Elokecha, when you're alone with Hashem and nobody is watching you. And it's interesting that he explains with this a Mishnah in the second parak of Pirkei Avos. We learn a different shot in this Mishnah. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says, "U'b'makom she'ein anoshim," when there's no men, hishtadel liyos ish. You should try to be a man. Now, we all know that one of the interpretations of this Mishnah is if you see that nobody is getting the job done, then roll up your sleeves. You come into shul, and there's no gabbai. So, b'makom she'ein ish, hishtadel liyos ish. You see, you're in a community, and nobody is learning with the children. So then, start learning how to teach children. That's the simple meaning of this Mishnah. But the Al-Shech says there's another vital message of this Mishnah. U'b'makom she'ein anoshim, when nobody is around and nobody is looking at you, still hishtadel liyos ish, still try to be a mensch. That means nobody would shout at their wife or at their husband if somebody was watching. But if nobody is around, they drop all pretenses and they let their frustrations get the better of them. So the Mishnah says, no, b'makom she'ein anoshim, when nobody is around, hishtadel liyos ish, try to be a mensch. You know, the famous word in Eishes Chayil, it says, Kamu baneha vayashrua. Her children get up and sing about her. Ba'ila v'yahalala. Her husband lauds her. praises her. So everybody asks, that's an Eishes Chayil? Tell me that other people, the husband, the children, it's their mother, it's the husband. No, but Shlomo HaMelech knows better. If even the husband sings about her, he sees her without her mask. He sees her without, the pretenses. Even the children sing about her. Oh, that's an Eishes Chayil. And this is the famous Gemara in Brachos, Daf Chav Ches. Gemara says in Brachos, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said to Talmidim, Halavai she'emoir shamayim aleichem k'moir basar v'dam. Halavai that you should be as afraid of Hashem as you're afraid of people. So, and by the way, this is the mood of Elul. What's the acronym of Elul? Ani ledodi. I am to my beloved. That means that I am aware that my beloved is watching me. And I'm behaving accordingly even though nobody else sees me. Then then Hashem gives us attention. So what are examples of this? So there are people, they daven in a late minyan in the morning. So it's after the Zman Kriya Shema. So they have to say Kriya Shema earlier in the morning. Now when they're in shul, they're going Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. But when they say Kriya Shema early in the morning, they whisk through it. Nobody's watching them. We have to make sure that our Kriya Shema early in the morning or later in the night, which is the main Kriya Shema, even though nobody sees us, but Tamim Tiyem Hashem Elokecha. What's another example of this? Another example of this is what a person is thinking about when they say Shemona Esrei. Nobody sees what you're thinking when you say Shemona Esrei except for Hashem. You might be saying Shemona Esrei and thinking about what you're going to eat. You're going to have a piece of kokosh and tea before you go to sleep. You're going to make yourself a fruit salad. That might be what you're thinking as you're saying Es Semach and Rifa'enu, and that's what. Are you talking to Hashem? Nobody knows that except for Hashem. Tomim Tiyah should be perfect im Hashem Elokecha when you're alone with Hashem. Said many times that this is true also when a person is in the bathroom. It's supposed to be tzniustik in the bathroom. Nobody sees you in the bathroom except for the Rabbeinu Shalom. But it's also true that the chamber of the mind is what the Alshich is talking about. Tomim Tiyah im Hashem Elokecha. Our mind is only seen by Hashem. And there we should be at Tomim. Our mind shouldn't bear grudges against people. It shouldn't nurse vengeance. It shouldn't desire what's not ours. It shouldn't have feelings of hate. This is all im Hashem Elokecha. Nobody else sees it. It shouldn't be full of sinful thoughts. Now this directive, Rashi channels it. It says, Tomim Tiyem Hashem Elokecha, says the Heilige Rashi, Hisalech imoi b'tmimus, go perfectly with Hashem, utitzap eloi, and look to Him, v'loi tachkor achar hasidus, and don't try to look what's going to be in the future. That's why Rav Moshe was very displeased with people running to Kabbalists. Al tachkar achar achitzidas. We never looked at zodiacs, at astrology. No. Hisalech imay betmimis utitzap aloi v'loi tachkar achar achitzidas. It's a beferish Rashi. It's interesting, though, that there is an exception used by only very, very of our greatest people, and that's the Geirul Agra. The Geirul Agra is a very complicated situation, a very complicated method of deriving information using a whole lottery system with a Tanakh. Now we know of times, astounding times, that the Geirul Agra was used. For example, Rav Moshe, who was shouldering the burden, Rav Moshe Feinstein, who was shouldering the burden of American Jewry, sent letters to Reb Aaron Kotler imploring him to come to America. And let me, it's so poetic. Let me use the language that Rosh Shiva sent to Reb Aaron. He sent him, Lovay Elav, to join him, Ulitztaref ba'afrochas Shmomois HaMidbar HaRuchani HaAmerikani, and to help dissipate the desert and desolation of spirituality in America. Reb Aaron Kotler relates that he was in a great dilemma whether he should go from Europe to Eretz HaKadosha, to Eretz Yisrael, and join the Holy Chabura in Eretz Yisrael, or to go to join Rav Moshe to the spiritual desert of America. So he did the Geirul Agra, and an incredible example of how Hashem guides the tzaddikim, the pasuk that he came up with using the details of the Geirul Agra was Vayomer Hashem el Aaron Leich Likras Moshe Hamidbara. Couldn't be clearer. That he was given the pasuk Vayomer Hashem el Aaron Leich Likras Moshe Hamidbara. On the other hand, the same dilemma confronted Reb Yitzchak Zev Soloveitchik, Zechet Tzadik L'Vracha, Zchus Yagen Aleinu, the Brisker Rav. He also used the Geirul Agra, and the pasuk said, he came up after the whole complicated Geirul, he came up with the pasuk, Yalu Harim Yerdu B'Kais El Mikayim Zeh Yasadet Alehem. You should go to this place that I found for them, which is of course Eretz Yisrael. And of course the Brisker Rav went to Eretz Yisrael and had the great brisk, and it's tens of thousands of Bachrim were there because of this answer that he was revealed to him with the Geirul Agra. But again, this is a very big exception. It's known it's documented that there was a terrible massacre of soldiers in Eretz Yisrael, and their bodies were beyond identification. And the great tzaddik Reb Aryeh Levine used the Geirul Agra, and the psukim that came up were able to identify each and every one, and they buried them with a matzeva, with their names, because of the Geirul Agra. And again, they say that when the Chavetz Chaim had a question where to go, he did not use the Geirul Agra. He said he didn't want to be matriach Hashem, to force Hashem's hand to answer what what he should do. He didn't even, the Chofetz Chaim didn't even use the Geir Lagra. But except for these extraordinary exceptions, it is not the Torah way to look for the future. And not only is it not the Torah way, chas v'shalom, with astrology, with zodiac, that Rav Moshe was not fond of going to Kabbalists. There's the famous story that the Medrash brings with Shlomo HaMelech and the language of the birds. We know that Shlomo HaMelech knew the sichos of the oifus. He knew the language of the birds. Now, there was a big linguist that he was an expert in languages. You know, there were people that were experts in language. Mordechai spoke all 70 languages. So there was a man that was an expert in languages, and he had a tremendous desire to learn the language of the birds. And he went after Shlomo HaMelech and pursued him to teach him the language of the birds. And Shlomo HaMelech told him it's not a good idea. It's not a good idea. But he pushed Shlomo HaMelech so much that Shlomo HaMelech taught it to him. And he was a very, very, very accomplished linguist, and he actually mastered the language of the birds. Anyway, he was walking, and one day he heard the birds that were hovering over his field, and they said, this field is going to be damaged by a flash flood. So he went right away and he sold the field. And indeed, a few weeks later, a flash flood wiped out the field. He said, wow, isn't it good that I know the language of the birds? A few weeks later, he heard the birds talking about his flock. And they said, you see this flock? It's going to become diseased. He sold the flock. Indeed, they got diseased, but he didn't lose because he sold it. He said, wow, I really, really, really am lucky. A few months later, the birds were hovering over his house, and he heard them saying, that house, it's full of termites. It's going to cave in. He took out all his furniture, emptied the house, and sold it. And months later, the house collapsed. He felt like the richest man in the world. The next year, a few birds were flying over him, and he heard them saying, you see that man? He's going to die in a few months. Uh-oh. What does he do now? He runs to Shlomo HaMelech. So Shlomo HaMelech says, are you telling me the whole story? He said, look, I have nothing to hide. First I heard them say that my land is going to get swamped. Then I heard them say my animals will be diseased. And I heard them say my house will be stricken by termites. So I saved myself, but now I don't know what to do. He said, I told you not to listen to the language of the birds. Hashem wanted to give you a kapara. First, he was going to give you a kapara with your animals, with your field, but you took the possibility away. Then he wanted to give you a kapara with your animals, but again you took it away. Then he wanted to give you a kapara with your house, but again you took it away. All that's left is your body. Now there's nothing you could do. This is why by the flood, at the time of the Mabul, it says that the Leinechtam Gzar Din El Ala Chamas, the decree was only sealed because of corruption. Why is that? Because since everything was stolen, they couldn't get a punishment on their house because it was stolen merchandise, on their property, even the land. It says the very 3 tvachim of the land was corrupt, it was stolen. They had to only be punished with their body. It's not good to know the future. Knowing the future is not good. But Rabban Shel Yisrael, the Chavetz Chaim, has a further diak over here on this pasuk. Tamim tia im Hashem alikecha. Rashi says, "Hisalek imay." You should trust Him. Utitzapaloi v'loy takar achar asidus, and you shouldn't look for the future. Says the Chavetz Chaim, that's only im Hashem alikecha. But when you're dealing with people, oh, you have to be takar. You have to look. In other words, here's a person, they read for the daughter a shidduch. Here's not an Indian of Tamim Tia. You have to say, what kind of a man is this going to be? Is he going to help my daughter? Is he going to be there when she has a problem? Is he going to learn with the children? There it is. It's absolutely good to be takar achar chasidus. Before a person becomes a partner with somebody in business, is he going to be attracted to shady deals? Is he going to try to force me into something that I'm not comfortable with? Is he going to try to have shabby merchandise? Is he going to try to put off paying debts or paying workers? There a person has to be takar achar chasidus. Okay. Invariably, Pasha Shoftim is in Chodesh Elul. And it starts off with a pasuk which on the surface is a directive for Jewish jurisprudence. It's very important. Shoftim v'shoitrim titen l'chol b'chol sharecha. You should have judges and enforcers by all your gates. Now this is very important. Rav David Cohen says that the only place that it says Yogain, grief, in Shemona Esrei is in the bracha of Hashiva Shofteinu Kavarishayim, return us Erlicha judges. Because when there's corrupt judges, oh, is it grief? Is it Yogain? When judges are slanted towards people of power or people of wealth, oh, is it Yogain? But besides the simple meaning, the Chidah asks a very basic question. It says, Shoftim v'shoitrim titen l'cha b'chol sharecha. Now, since judges and enforcers is a national job, so it should say it in the plural. Shoftim v'shoitrim titen lachem b'chol sharecha. Why does it say titen l'cha in the singular? So the Chidah quotes from the Star Talmud of the Arizal. The Chidah quotes from Rab Chaim Vital. Chaim Vital is a tzaddik l'bracha, Zchus Yagen Aleinu. He says that B'chol Sharecha refers to our gateways. We have gateways. Our ears are a gateway. Our eyes are a gateway. Our mouth is a gateway. Our nose, our orifices, the male organ is a gateway. And the Reb Chaim Vital says that the Torah is giving you a directive, giving us a directive, Shoftim. You should put judges, b'chol sha'arecha, by all your gateways. In other words, there should be a judge. Should I be listening to this? Should I be listening? Is it right for me to hear this information? There should be a judge by our eyes. Should I be looking at this? You know, Rabbi Tursky, he said that we know now, there's so many studies that people that watch violence are more violent. You know, today in a church, somebody came in and killed 2 children and wounded 17 people. Where did this come from? Where did this come from? But there's so much violence being watched in movies, on television. People become more violent. A person has to have a judge on their eyes what they're supposed to see. A person has to have a judge by their mouth. And here Rabbi say, you cannot emphasize enough how this is important for Elul. Because part of the hachana of Elul is that we know that soon, less than 3 weeks, we're going to have slichas. In slichas, we're going to be begging Hashem, Lishmaya Elarina V'elat Tfilah. We're going to be begging the Rebbeinu Shalom. We're going to say to Rebbeinu Shalom, please, you should forgive us, right? Please, we're going to ask Hashem that He should slach lanu, He should forgive us. It's the whole idea of slichas. In order to have an effective, potent mouth, ein kateger nasa saneger. The prosecutor can never become a defender. So if our mouths are hurting people, how could we think that we could wield our mouths to ask Hashem for mercy? If our mouths are speaking Lashon Hara, you know, that's why it says by the Mitzayra, the Mitzayra is the Moitzi Ra, the person that says bad things. It says that the Mitzayra says, Tomei, Tomei Yikra. He calls out to people, I'm Tomei. And Chazal tell us in Masechtas Arachin, he has to tell people because he can't pray for himself. He needs help. Because his mouth is sullied with Lashon Hara. How could he ask for help? En katega nasa saneger. So therefore we have to have, we learned this in the beginning of Elul, we have to have a shofet by our mouth. And the mouth, it's very, very complicated. There's a lot of things we could do wrong with our mouth. We could lie. Lying is not a small thing. A person that lies is banished from the mechitza of Hashem. Dover shkarim lo yikin keneged einai. Won't be able to stand before me. Now lying is a very, very infectious habit. It's just too simple. You lie, you don't have to answer for your mistakes. You lie, you don't have to explain. You lie, you don't have to listen to criticism. You just lie out of the situation. Sometimes people lie in order to get better results. But lying, you have to have a shofet. Midvar sheker tirchak. We have to distance ourselves from lies. You have to have a shofet by our mouth. You have to have a shofet by our mouth that we don't say oinas devarim. Oh, oinas devarim. It's a bad business. The Gemara tells us that oinas, it's Gemara above Metzia, that oinas devarim is worse than oinas mammon. We don't look very well to a pickpocket. pickpocket. A Yiddish mensch, from a Yid, would never be a pickpocket. But a from a Yid might say something not nice to somebody. And especially a husband or a wife. We know how to hurt. Because, we know what bothers our spouses. So we could really hurt. But I asked Devarim, if they're here to Rabbi, what are we doing in Elul? We're going to start davening that Hashem shouldn't hurt us. We're going to ask Hashem, Yavinu Valkeinu. Kasveinu b'sefer slicha mechila. Mechaik b'rachamecha rabim kol shitreicha. We're saying we don't want Hashem to hurt us. But if we hurt people with our mouths, how could we ask Hashem not to hurt us? So we have to have a shofet, especially in Elul, we have to have a shofet by our mouth. We have to have a shofet by our mouth that we don't reveal other people's secrets. We're not allowed to reveal other people's secrets. Gilui Said. We have to have a shofet by our mouth that we don't chas v'shalom say nivel peh. Now you'll say, "No, Rabbi Weiss, we're not gonna say vulgarity." But do you know that Chazal say that not only should you not listen to vulgarity, not only should you not say vulgarity, but you should also not listen to vulgarity. It hurts the soul. So you have to have a shofet by our ears not to listen to vulgarity. It's interesting that when Reb Chaim Vital talks about, actually it's the Chidah, when he talks about the Sha'orim, the gateways, he counts a gateway that I wouldn't have automatically counted as a gateway. He counts as a gateway the Shar HaMishush. He says the gateway of touch is a gateway. Because I guess he says this because he holds that touch is a means of communication. Just like the mouth is a gateway because it's a means of communication. The Chidah says that Shar HaMishush, there's a gateway of touch. The Rebbeinu Shalom is going to judge a person. So when you were supposed to show chiba, when you were supposed to show affection to your spouse, did you use the gateway of touch correctly? Now we know now scientifically that touch, when used correctly, promotes oxytocin and it relaxes a person and it causes good hormones. And the Rebbeinu Shalom wants to know, it comes to, the Rebbeinu Shalom says, you're coming to me and you're telling me that you want me to treat you nicely. So I gave you a spouse. How are you doing with the Shar HaMishush? Again, it's interesting because, I had the Zechiyah to be on the second day of Rosh Chodesh Elul. The Krula Rebbe feared Tish with his yeshivas hakayitz up in the mountains, very, very Erlich HaBachrim. And he mentioned, not in the name of Reb Chaim Vital, in the name of one of the Hasidic Rebbes, he mentioned also this idea of having a shofet by the Sha'arim. And he said that there are 7 Sha'arim, and he counted the 7 Sha'arim, the 2 ears, the 2 eyes, the 2 nostrils, and the mouth. So I asked him quietly, and I said, what about the Rosh HaGviyah? So he said, this Rebbe didn't mention. He said, you're right. Also the Rosh HaGviyah, actually to say 2 nostrils. I don't know why, to be mechalik, the 2 nostrils. But the Chidah adds a chiddush that he's talking about, that there's another Shar HaMishush. Now, I want to tell you that unfortunately, in the world that we live in, we have more sha'arim. And these gateways and these portals are very, very important to guard. So you'll say, what portals are you talking about? I'm talking about texting. I'm talking about WhatsApping. I'm talking about Twitter, or what they call X. I'm talking about Instagram. These can be used as weapons of mass destruction. A person puts out a text. He's looking for a handyman. Someone else puts down, oh, I know this handyman, Yankee. And then somebody else says, no, don't use Yankee. I hired him and he messed me up. Oy vey, you have to be so careful. So now Yankee loses 10 customers. It happened to be that this person, he wasn't happy with the job. He didn't look like the color. To say that he messed me up and hurt somebody, it's a weapon of mass destruction. There are family chats. And someone puts on the family chat, yeah, Javi is at it again, up to her old tricks. And people see it from all, not just from the neighborhood. This family is in Eretz Yisrael and in Arizona and in Canada, and they all see it. It's Makshal Rabin with Lashon Hara, and it hurts people. It's a gefährlich. Shoftim, we have to have judges by the gates. Yeah. Now, it's interesting that the Kruller Rebbe said, remember we said that this is special for Elul. The Kruller Rebbe said that the pasuk is saying, if we put up shoftim b'chol sharecha. Now it's very, very hard. Somebody walks in the street and people are not sneeristic. It's very hard. It says, asher atem zonim achreim, a human being, a male is drawn to it. But if a person puts a shofet and works on it and tries, oh, then it gets hatzlacha from Hashem. That's why it says, shoftim titin lecha b'chol sharecha, asher Hashem alikecha noisein lecha. If you make an attempt, says the Rebbe, the Kruller Rebbe Shlita, if there's an esarusa de lesata, if there's a tent below, we start, we avert our gaze. Then there's a bigger sarusa lamala. Then Hashem helps us. He says that's the recipe of Elul. Anila Dodi, if we make an attempt, we just show, then B'dodi Li, then Hashem gives us a bigger sarusa de lamala. Then Hashem gives us Asher Hashem alikecha noisein lecha. We have to start. That's what it says. Habol l'taher, somebody that comes to purify, Messiah noisai. The person is helped. This, by the way, of saying, I'm coming now, where I'm going to be using my mouth in Avinu Malkeinu, in all of the tefillas, Asay Leman Shemech, Asay Leman Yiminecha, we're going to come to Hashem, Kasveinu B'Sefer Chaim Toivim, B'Sefer Chaim Rachav V'Shalom, Farnasa Toivim. When we're using our mouth, we have to prepare our mouths. This is the way the Manchester Rosh Hashiva learns what many people say before Baruch Shomer. Hareini mizamen es pila hoida yisul halal shaberach esbayri. I'm preparing my mouth. He says, how do you prepare your mouth? The Manchester Yeshiva was so makbid in Lashon Hara. You prepare your mouth by not using it for bad. Now it says, Shoftim v'shoitrim titein lecha. So we said we know what the shofet is. The shofet is we should judge, should I be saying this? Should I be looking at this? Should I be listening to this? That's the shofet. What's the shoiter? What's the enforcer? It means that we should try to have a system where we penalize ourselves. That if we mess up, we penalize ourselves. You know, there are people that they go on a diet, and if they're worried that they won't follow the diet, they say, look, if I don't follow my diet, I'll penalize myself. That's the shoitrim. The shoitrim is to penalize oneself. That if a person doesn't watch the mouth and flies off in a rage, in an anger, they'll penalize themselves. Now, the Taimei HaMikra adds a caveat to what Reb Chaim Vital says, what the Chidah says. He says that B'chol Sharecha refers to the portals that we enter through. The doors of our house, the doors of the Beis HaKnesses, the doors of a store. Says the Tamei HaMikra, Shoftim titein lecha b'chol sharecha. Whenever you enter into a gate, whenever you enter through a door, you should judge yourself, what should I be doing when I go into this place? So for example, it's a very simple example. A person has a shofet, he goes into the Beis HaKnesses. So as he's entering the Beis HaKnesses, he makes up, I'm not going to talk in shul. I'm going to greet everybody b'sever panim yafas, with a smile. I'm going to make up my mind that what I do, it should be meaningful. I'm not going to veg out. I'm not going to be a space cadet and read the words and daydream. Everything is going to be meaningful as best as I can. So that's a shofet before the Beis HaKnesses. It's a shofet. Well, here's another person. He's entering into the master bedroom. Now he or she didn't see their spouse during the day. So before he goes into the master bedroom, he keeps in mind that I'm going to be attentive to my spouse. I'm going to be affectionate. The tongue of the wise is healing. By the way, helping in this judgment tremendously is utilizing the mezuzah. Because that's why the mezuzah is by the portal of the room. That we should remember when we go in the room that Hashem is in the room. That will help guide us how we behave when we go into that room. Here's a person goes into a store. Now the person is not planning to buy anything, but he's thinking about buying the item on Amazon. But he goes in the store and drays the clerk a cup for half an hour, trying on this, that, and this, knowing full well he's not buying, and he's doing it for Amazon. That's not Erlich. It's Gnevis Adas. And it's when he went in, he wasn't shofet how he should behave when he went into the store. I just want to say it's a technical thing, but I found it very interesting. B'chol sherecha you should have Shoftim. In the Torah's parlance, the Bezdin was referred to at the gates of the city. And it says that light was Yosef B'shar Ha'ir. It says, V'olsi Yavimta Hashara, the Yavama went up to the gate, and there the rabbis gave her advice. If he was old and she was young, or vice versa, they said they shouldn't do Yibam. So, B'pashtas, when we say in Yukum Purkan, Dayana Dibava, the judges at the gate, it refers to the fact that the Bezdin was at the gate. That's the Pashtas. However, Reb Chaim Kanievsky, Zech Tzadik V'Bracha, Zchusi Yagan Aleinu, says that Yukum Purkan was written at the time of the Ga'onim. And at the time of the Ga'onim, they already didn't have the Bezdin at the gates. And therefore he says that he believes that Dayana Dibava, in our day, the judges usually rule on money matters. And since most money matters are covered by Bava Kama, Bava Metzia, and Bava Basra, he says that Dayane Dibava refers to the Dayanim that are expert in the Bavas. Very, very fascinating pshat. We have in the Parsha the directive of Tzedek, Tzedek, Tirdoif. Righteousness, righteousness you should pursue. So the question is, why does it have to repeat Tzedek, Tzedek? So many of the Mefarshim give a very, very powerful explanation. They say you should pursue righteousness, but only with righteousness. Even if the end result is proper, but if you have to go about it to get that end result in a devious, wrong way, then the end does not justify the means. Tzedek, you should pursue righteousness, but only with tzedek. I give an example. Some people in the Kehillah feel that their Rav is not good for their shul. He's not connecting with the people. So therefore, they devise a scheme to make him look bad so they could send him away. But they want it because it's sound minds feel that he's not good for the shul. So maybe the end is tzedek, but they have to go about it only through tzedek. Tzedek, tzedek, tirdaif. Now Rabbi Twersky gives a very potent example of this. There's a very, very interesting halacha in Masechta Sanhedrin about a capital crime. If, let's say, the Bezdin of the Supreme Court, the Bezdin of 70, is ruling against a murderer. The din is, if all 70 dayanim say that he's guilty, his verdict is he's innocent. That's the halacha. The halacha is, if it's unanimous that he's guilty, we exonerate him. Now, you might say that sounds crazy. If 69 say he's guilty and one says he's innocent, he's executed. But if all 70 say that he's guilty, then we send him home. Now, there's speculation what the reason is for that. One opinion is that if he was really guilty, then the Yetzer Hara would try to mess around, because the Yetzer Hara always goes against the emes and tries to get the judges to make a mistake. From the fact that the Yetzer Hara is not trying, He's letting everybody say guilty. It must be that he's innocent. Because otherwise, Yetzer Hara would have at least tried to convince somebody to get it wrong. That's one explanation. There's another explanation that if it's so clear from the testimony of the two witnesses match so perfectly that none of the judges have any question, then there's a suspicion that it's staged and it's a frame. It's a put-up. Because otherwise the testimony couldn't have matched so perfectly. It must be that they discussed it beforehand, and at least there's a possibility that it was a frame-up. Now in this case, what happened is there's 70 judges, 69 feel that he's guilty. One of the Dayanim feels that he's taka innocent. If he says that he's innocent, the man is going to be executed. So he comes up with a chap. He'll say that he's guilty, and then he'll be sent home. He feels he's innocent. So let him say that he's guilty, then he'll be 70 saying guilty, and then he'll be sent home. And he feels that he's innocent. So the shaila is, since he feels that he's innocent, could he say that he's guilty, because then it would be a unanimous decision that he's guilty, and he goes home? Says Rabbi Twersky, that's not tzedek tirdai. He's taka pursuing righteousness because he feels that he's innocent, but it's not tzedek. He's lying. He's saying guilty when he thinks he's innocent. You're not allowed to do that because that's not tzedek tirdai. Now, there's a famous chidah over here. The chidah says tzedek tirdai, leman tichya v'yarashta es. You should pursue righteousness in order that you will live and inherit the land. There's a famous Gemara in Rosh Hashanah Daf Daled. The Gemara says in Rosh Hashanah Daf Daled, ha'omer sela zulitz tzedakah. If, let's say, Chaim says, I'm giving this sela to tzedakah, b'shvil sheyichya b'ni, in order that my son should live, or b'shvil she'ezke l'chaya olam haba, or in order that I should live for olam haba. Says the Gemara, harizet tzaddik gomer, he's a completely righteous person. Asks Tosfos, how can you see he's completely righteous? It's a beferish Mishnah in Pirkei Avos that al tiyu kavodim ha'mishamshin esarav al manasa kabel pras. The Mishnah says categorically, don't be like those that serve in order to get reward. Yet here he says, if I'm giving this seller to tzedakah that my son should live or that I should get olam haba, he's a tzaddik gomer. What do you mean tzaddik gomer? He's doing it al manasa kabel pras. Now some say that the reason why he said it is that the ani shouldn't be shamed. So he says to the ani, I'm giving you this that my son should be saved, that I should get olam haba. He doesn't make the ani feel that he's just getting a handout, saying, you're doing me a favor. So since he's doing it that the ani shouldn't be shamed, he's a tzaddik gomer. That's how some answer. But the chidah gives a different answer. Very interesting answer. Again asking why the pasuk repeats tzedek tirdai. And the chidah says, a very fascinating chidah. The chidah says that here's a person that fulfilled his requirement of tzedakah. He gave what he had to give in tzedakah. After that, he says, I'm giving extra in order that my son should live, or that I should get olam haba, That's a tzaddik gomer. And he says that's pshat in the pasuk. Tzedek, you gave tzedek. And then tzedek tirdav, you gave more than you have to. L'man tichya, in order that your son should live. V'yarashta es ha'aretz, so you should get olam haba. That's good. That's a tzaddik gomer. Before we go further, first of all, I want to thank our anonymous sponsor who sponsored this evening for the schus that his daughter, Yehudis Nami, Basara Gittel, should find her Zivig Hagen Uruya quickly, happily, and easily. And also my dear Talmud Berit Goldwasser, who is sponsoring the Shir L'Ilui Nishmas, his grandfather, Mordechai Gimpel, Ben Klunimus Kalman, Neshama should have an aliyah. If you would like to sponsor a share, a wonderful thing to do, especially in Elul, 718-916-3100. You could text me, 718-916-3100, rmmwsi@aol.com. Also, this coming Wednesday, we're starting a new Masechta in the Daf Yomi, Masechtas Huriyas, and it's a short Masechta of 13 blot. Usually to sponsor Masechta is $1,000, but since Huriyas is 13 blot, we're having a special sponsorship of just $360. If you're interested, 718-916-3100. This week's Parsha talks about the Arei Miklot, the cities of refuge. And when it talks about the Arei Miklot, it says, Tochen lecha haderech. You should prepare a road. Says Rashi from the Gemara Makis Yudamid Beis, Miklat, Miklat hayukosav al prashas drafim. By all the forks in the road, they put a sign, an arrow, this way to the miklat. So Tochen lecha haderech, that the Reitzeach B'Shogeg, who is fleeing for his life from the Goyal Adam, from the avenging relative, and he can't be caught not knowing where to go, we put up signs, so clear signs, to show this way to the Arei Mikvah. Chavetz Chaim asks, how come we don't have signs? It doesn't say anywhere in Chazal that we have signs for those that are Oila L'Regel, for those that are going Aliyah L'Regel, this way to the Beis HaMikdash. I mean, millions of people, for sure, hundreds of thousands of people, came up Aliyah L'Regel, and they're traveling. There should be clear signs. Take a right, take a left, take a right, to Yerushalayim. Chavetz Chaim gives a very fascinating answer. He says, when people come up L'Aliyah L'Regel, we want them to ask for directions. Because we want other people to hear, oh, you're going to Yerushalayim, I should also go to Yerushalayim. We want them to stop and influence people. On the other hand, this killer, we don't want him talking to people. First of all, he's in a rush. But also, we don't want him talking to people. We don't want him influencing people. Just get to the Arei Mikvah. You have to know, when you're traveling to a good place, remember I told you, the Tzofchi Yabiyu brings down a Maisa, that there was an old man that went to a shir, and he carried a heavy Gemara, and he went through the main road. So somebody once asked him, I don't understand, you come every night, why don't you leave your Gemara in shul? If you learn at home, get a small Gemara at home too. But it's a heavy Gemara, and then why do you go through the main road? There's a shortcut to get to the shul, you could save 3 blocks. So he told him, I carry my Gemara, and I go through the main road, so that a lot of people should see me every night going to a daf. And it should influence other people also to go. You know how important it is? Oh, it's coming to Rosh Hashanah. What a way to ask Hashem, Hashem, you know, I want a better year. This year I'm going to go to a shir every day. Every day I'm going to learn a daf Gemara. A daf Gemara is mamish, an elixir of life. Oirech yamim biyamina. And to get other people and say, you know, the Daf Yomi changed my life. It gave me a chabura of Torah. It connected me to a Rebbe. It gives me a purpose. I feel that I'm paving my way for the next world. Ashrei mi shebo lekan v'talmud biyadai. This is a time. Next Wednesday we're starting Huriyas. Then in 13 days we're finishing Seder Nezikin. And before Yom Adin we're starting Seder Kachin with Masechtas Zvachim. What a wonderful time to get people to start the Daf Yomi or to come back to the Daf Yomi. We want to thank all of you for joining us. Wish you a good Shabbos, a wonderful evening, and now we're going to do the Mishnah Yomis.